our minimum size was 500k a month, about probably at the start of this year, and we've actually restructured them. Yeah, we've just changed our offering a lot, so now we can actually work with brands doing anything from like 50,000 a month upwards. We've got something we can do. So it might not be full service CRO, because you're not going to get a return on that if you're doing 50k a month. But we can do, we've got an audit we can do, we've got landing pages we can do, we can do projects, right? If you literally just want to understand how to put together bundles and upsells, we will come in and just do that one project for you and help you optimize your upsell.
Hey guys, and welcome to the CEO After Dark show. Today I have with me Will Laurenson, the CEO of Customers Who Click, and an expert CRO. Some would say a CRO god, or at least a demigod. Will, thank you for joining.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Thanks for having me.
Well, don't be humble. Tell us, what do you do? Give some context to the listeners so that kind of they are all on the same page.
Yeah, sure. So we do conversion rate optimization for e-commerce brands. Although actually, I'm trying to move away from calling it conversion rate optimization. We do CRO, which we view as customer revenue optimization. And what I mean by that is, I could go on a long rant about this, so I'll try not to go on too long. But conversion rate is not the most important metric for us and for an e-commerce brand, right? It gets impacted by so many other metrics. And also, at the end of the day, you want to make money, right? Yeah. We can increase your conversion rate, but if your revenue goes down or if your margin goes down, it's meaningless. So the way we approach it is, how can we make a brand more money, or how can we save them more money on each of those transactions purchases? So yeah, we view it as customer revenue optimization.
I think the CRO industry as a whole is like the industry that changes their name the most out of every other industry I've seen. I've heard CRO, CVO, CXO, now CRO with a new twist. Why do you think this happens? Is it because it's difficult to understand the value of the service actually? Because I think you are all doing similar things. It's just that it perhaps is not like clicking for the clients maybe, or for the audience.
I think that's exactly it. Like we all know what we're doing. We're all doing similar things, right? We all want to help brands make more money. We want to help them experiment across the business as well, right? It's not just A/B testing on a website. It's A/B testing anything we can in the business to try and make you more efficient. But obviously, conversion rate optimization as a term means that when people think about it, they go, "Oh, okay, you're going to help optimize our conversion rates." It's like, well, okay, for B2B, that makes sense, right? For B2B, when you want leads, you want demos, you want quotes, contact forms, or whatever, conversion rate optimization makes sense because conversion rate is all that really matters there. But when we're dealing with conversion rate and AOV at the same time, which means, you might be trying to influence one of them with a test, but you still have to measure the impact on both to make sure you're still making money. And then we want to look at returns, right? If we increase your conversion rate 20%, but your returns go up 20%, you're losing money, right? You're going to be worse off in the long term. So there's a lot more around it. And, at the end of the day, we're still going to go by CRO, and people will have that assumption of what they think CRO is. But when we're talking about it, we're going to be using customer revenue optimization a lot more, just to try and reinforce like the more holistic view that we take to a business, and that it's not just conversion rates and it's not just A/B testing.
I like that a lot. I think it's actually a better name than the usual CRO terminology that people use. And
I like it.
It makes sense. I think it's a better way to describe it. And you make a really good point about the trade-off metrics. Of course, if I'm just thinking this from the email marketing perspective. If I say on a pop-up, I'm going to give you a free Tesla, lots of people are going to sign up, right? But then if I don't give the Tesla, they're going to unsubscribe most likely. So I understand what you mean.
But also, I suppose in a way, it's like people viewing conversion rate optimization as you're going to optimize conversion rates. It's like measuring the performance of an email agency on open rates and clicks.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't really matter. Right? They are metrics that you want to improve, but it's only the end goal of whatever that campaign is that matters. Whether that's revenue or if it's getting people to leave a review or whatever that conversion rate is right at the end, but trying to get people to do something valuable, right? You don't measure PPC agencies on click-through rates, right? You measure them on their actual revenue performance. So yeah, for some reason CRO just gets viewed a bit differently, and it's baffling as to why, to be honest.
I think it might be because it's like a very complicated service, right? Like it affects pretty much everything. The person executing it needs to know a little bit about everything, or actually a lot about everything. It's not just a little. You need to be good at data, psychology, UX, copy, like a bunch of different components have to come together. And that's perhaps why it's because like I don't see it in email marketing, right? Like people don't really, like nobody cares really about open rates. Yet in conversion rate optimization, they still care about conversion rates. So I think it might be this complexity that people can't just wrap their heads around the what is it actually, right? Like they don't really get it. And in my humble view, I've worked with a lot of CRO guys, and in my view, ultimately, it's like basically being good at business, right? Like having good fundamentals, like understanding data, structuring things well, prioritizing. It's just being good at business in some sense.
It is more of a growth discipline for a business, because it's not a marketing channel, right? We don't drive traffic, right? If you switch off PPC, paid media, email, and everything, CRO can't do anything because we've got nothing to optimize. We've got no data to use, and so I think that's probably part of the issue as well.
Yeah,
right. People, because we're not driving traffic and you can't attribute revenue to that traffic. It's a bit of a what does CRO do? So it's something I learned the hard way, right, when I got into this.
How did you
after about 8, I fell into CRO by accident, really. Just in the jobs that I was in. There were two. I think the moment I can look back to is there were two businesses I worked at in a row, two startups that were quite similar. One was a digital subscription for magazines, so a bit like Spotify for magazines, and one was a car rental service, but both of them were digital acquisition. Right, so we were acquiring people to apps. We needed them to create accounts, and we could see what they were doing through the data we had. And both these companies were quite well funded, and so they were basically just handing money to the marketing teams and saying, "Go, we've got the product, we're set here, go grow the business." And it just doesn't work like that, does it?
Yeah.
Right? There's still you've still got to learn what your customers actually want and how they want to use your tools or your products. And so, I think if I remember the numbers correctly, we were on about, when I left one of them, we were on about 10,000 paid users out of a total user base of about 120,000, right? Which is not a great, I don't feel like that's a very good conversion rate from trial to paid user. We dig into feedback, and we could just see that we were having problems everywhere. Everywhere except the ad side. The ad side, we were confident in our ad performance. We were getting good click-through rates, targeting the right audiences. They were, it was cheap acquisition, but we could see that, our landing pages weren't that great and needed work. But the dev team owned those. So it took a while of fighting them to be like, and this is one of those companies where the dev team wanted to build everything, like everything.
I hate that.
So we had to fight that battle and say, you've either got to give us a landing page tool or you've got to build us the ability for us to edit these ourselves. And there were some problems in the app. And so I started doing customer research, right? So first I looked into the data and I started to see, what does a paying subscriber look like compared to a non-paying, compared to somebody who ended their trial and stopped? Or in the other business, like what does a good user look like compared to someone who uses it once, uses their welcome offer and then disappears? And then that led me down the route of getting feedback. So initially, that feedback came through just email surveys that went out over time. So it'd be, if you finished your trial and then did not subscribe, you'd get an email asking you for feedback. And if you got, if you went through certain stages and things, every now and again we were dropping in little feedback requests. And I just started to realize that there were just problems going on, right? And things that needed fixing. And eventually I remember just basically forced my way into the product team and said, I am going to work with you on this because that's the only way we're going to grow this thing. Right? You have to understand, like, here's the data, here's what our users are telling us, but here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right? You need to scrap your 12-month roadmap that contains a load of stuff none of our customers are mentioning and talking about, and we need to fix the stuff that is an issue there. And I really enjoyed doing it. I really enjoyed gathering this feedback, gathering the data, identifying problems and coming up with solutions to them and trying to fix it. And that just excited me so much more than running ad campaigns. So that's where it went eventually. A couple of jobs later, I left my last job in November 19 and then started Customers Who Click.
That was basically during the pandemic, right?
Just before.
Yeah.
It was just before the pandemic hit. Yeah.
Was this a good or a bad thing? Like the pandemic?
A bit of both. The good thing was obviously like e-commerce exploded. Right. So many more businesses coming into e-commerce, so much more opportunity. Initially, the first 6 months of the pandemic, everyone shut down. Right, because everyone was like, we don't even know how to run a business. We're used to being in the office or in shops or whatever. Now we're shutting down our business and moving entirely remote, entirely online. So those first 6 months, everything disappeared. But then things started to pick up really well after that. The downside of it was I had always been in-house, in office with people. So I went from my last job, I went from an office of about 1,000 people, might have been 1,200 actually, in central London, to working on my own from my bedroom. And so that, I didn't quite realize it at the time, how much I relied on like in-person communication and discussions and look, being able to run ideas past team members and things. So that was tough, and it's something I had to work out. And it just led to finding networking groups. Right, finding other, like really, really heavily targeting the e-commerce market on the kind of agency tech side to be like, who can I speak to, who's going through similar things, and just building relationships there. So I had people going through similar things in a similar space that I could chat to, I could bounce ideas off, and have those conversations with.
I think you're doing this even now, right? Like you're organizing a lot of dinners, a lot of like get-togethers in London.
Yeah, I've actually we're booking something in. I think it's going to be. I think it's the 18th of Feb. I can't. Sorry, not Feb. August. 18th. I think it's. It's around mid-August. It's a Thursday, mid-August. We're going to do some drinks in central London.
Which is
I
nice.
really like organising these things.
I live in Athens, which doesn't have. There's obviously a lot of e-commerce companies, but they are not the companies I would see fitting our ideal client profile. So I'm not really involved in the networking scene so much in Athens. How does that work when you are in London, which is a huge hub of very high, let's say, value type of connections? Like how does it work?
So, getting brands along to things is really difficult, especially bigger brands. So these drinks, I would not expect to get a brand doing more than 10 million to it. Maybe even 5. We tend to get a few. Last time we did it through the same kind of network group, we got a couple of brands there that were both very small. So I view it much more as building relationships with potential partners, right? People who might refer us work, people we can refer work to, or just people we can have a chat about e-commerce to, right? Because that's always just really, really good, really useful as well. Just building those relationships and and a lot of the time it will be agency owners as well.
Yeah.
So being able to have like very similar conversations about, what's working for you guys at the moment, like how you're getting leads, how you're feeling about LinkedIn at the moment, commonly comes up. So yeah, for this sort of thing, I'm not, to get brands there, it's got to be like a super high end event. It's got to be sponsored. It's got to be like
Yeah.
a really nice dinner at a club. And it's still really hard work to pull in brands for it.
Why do you think that? Is that
So
because they have so much choice? Are people pitching them too much? Or like, where does that happen?
I think yeah, there's probably a little bit of, if I go to a free event, how much value is there going to be, right? At least So I know. Do you know the guys at Quickfire Digital?
Yes, I think. Yes.
Yes, Nathan Lomax.
I think so,
Maybe.
yes. I don't know personally, but I've seen LinkedIn.
Okay, so they do roundtables, like dinners, and so they can get 8 to 10 brands around a table, and then it's him and a sponsor, maybe two sponsors, and they have a good discussion. And so I think you can get these brands along because they know they're going to speak to other brands in similar situations, or like some brands that are slightly smaller, some brands that are slightly bigger. Right, so they know they're going to learn from people in their space. Whereas I think like just a drinks event is just a bit too casual, and it's kind of like, at the end of the day, I can go to a drinks event anytime.
Yeah.
Right? I was at one last week. I've got one in 2 weeks' time. Right? I probably could have one every week if I wanted to. If I really looked for them, I could go for drinks at an e-commerce networking event every week. But the way I'm viewing it is, obviously, if you put that round table on, you've got 8 to 10 brands in there, and that's really good. But that's 8 to 10 max, right? And if they're not ready to buy, or if they've already got a CRO agency, I can't do much. Whereas if I can build relationships with tech partners and agencies who have clients who they might be able to refer to us, that's where we're seeing a lot more value with our efforts, really.
I see.
Building up our own network.
Is there some sort of criteria that you use to say this is a good fit for us in terms of the clients? I mean, like, are you looking for a specific size of business, for example? How does that work?
Clients. So we've restructured a bit because our minimum size was 500K a month, about probably at the start of this year, and we've actually restructured them. Yeah, we've just changed our offering a lot. So now we can actually work with brands doing anything from like 50,000 a month upwards. We've got something we can do. So it might not be full service CRO, because you're not going to get a return on that if you're doing 50K a month. But we can do, we've got an audit we can do. We've got landing pages we can do. We can do projects, right? If you literally just want to understand how to put together bundles and upsells, we will come in and just do that one project for you, and help you optimize your upsell flows and things like that. So being a lot more flexible has really allowed us to acquire a lot more clients and work with a lot more brands, which is really good, because previously we were saying no to too many brands who absolutely could benefit from something, but because we had been quite rigid with our offering, we were having to turn them down.
What I find, and I really want to hear how you handle this, because I think your service is more complicated than our service, and I think you might relate. But what I find is that clients try to move outside the scope of the agreement, right? So you might have, for example, this bite-sized service where you just teach them the upsells and the cross-sells and all of that. How do you handle it when they try to move away a little bit from this and ask for something that you would not fit within this rubric? Do you just say, hey, this is good, but it's going to cost extra, and this is how much it costs? Like, how do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, I think there's probably three, off the top of my head, there's probably three ways of dealing with it. The first is, if it's something quite small, we might just do it. We might just say, yeah, fine, we'll just have a quick look at that for you. or we can quickly make that change. That's not a problem. We'll just do it. The second is we don't do this service, so we'll refer it out. So sometimes people ask us to take a look at email flows, right? My actual in-house background was quite heavily on the email side actually. So I do enjoy email, SMS. I really like that side of things, but we don't offer it as a service. So quite often we would just say, look, it's not something we can really provide you that much help with, but we know an agency who can. Like we've got partners who can help you with this. More proactively with that, we came up with a method to be more proactive, which is where we will actually go and do like a mini audit for them, basically without telling them. So we always ask for access to Klaviyo and stuff anyway, because it's useful to be able to look in there for certain information. So what we would do is we would do a mini audit of Klaviyo, and if we can identify a few opportunities for improvement, we will proactively say to them, look, you're missing XYZ from Klaviyo. We know an agency who can help you fix this and sort it out properly. Would you like an introduction? So sometimes we'll actually get ahead of the client. So instead of them asking us if we can do that for them or have a look, we kind of take a quick look and then say, oh, you've got a problem, we can refer you. And then the third option is, as you said, it's kind of, we would just say something like, yeah, cool, that's something we can do for you. Let's jump on a call. Like the price for this ranges from this to this. Let's jump on a call and we can discuss. Okay. So we just let them know, like very quickly and not too bluntly, like this is out scope. This is an extra project that you're gonna have to pay for, and then we kind of let them make a decision there.
Which I guess is why you have started offering smaller services, so that you can kind of get your foot in the door, and then you can kind of expand on other services also, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we've got almost like introductory offers as well, right? So offers that we know, it's an easier pitch to get someone in to do this project, and if they like it, then hopefully they'll say, "Cool, we want to hire you for full service CRO or for landing pages or whatever else." It's that classic kind of value ladder sort of approach, right? So you get someone to sign up for something for free, like a lead magnet. Then if you get them to pay for a small product or service, then you move them up to the next step and then the next step. That's kind of the route we're taking. Whereas previously it was, when we first started, it was basically just, this is our service. That's it. If you can't do this, that's it. Go find someone else. It doesn't really work.
Or at least it doesn't work at scale, I guess, right? Like you can't just find enough people that would fit that criteria. That's probably the...
Yeah, exactly. We were closing ourselves off to like maybe 5% of the market who could afford and were big enough to do that full service offering. But now that we're open to 50K upwards a month, we're open to probably 90% of the market.
When you look back, what's the perhaps number one mistake that you've made? Perhaps it is what you just said, but is there anything else that comes to mind?
The more mistake I've made
in running the business.
I need to keep track. Yeah, I need to keep track of these properly, because I think I'm very good at actually like making mistakes, analyzing them, and moving on. Right, it's the CRO in me, right? Yeah. I will, analyze like what went wrong, how can I do this better, and I move on. And so the mistake is almost forgotten. Obviously, if I get into that situation again, I'll be like, "Oh, I messed this up." Biggest mistake? Probably not bringing in help quick enough. So trying to do everything, even in the earlier days, trying to do everything myself and not wanting to risk spending money. And because I was in this kind of situation where I was like, right, I need X amount for me just to keep me going. Then I've got X amount for the business expenses. And then I want to put X amount away every month so that if I lose clients, I've got money in the bank and I'm secure. And so that led to me then not investing the money in agencies or freelancers or people who could either take work off my hands or were just so much better at doing certain stuff. So like I work, well, as you're aware, I work with an agency for outreach and sales, and the situation could be so much different if I'd brought them in a year earlier, right? If I'd pulled the trigger, but instead, I looked at cheap options, right? And the cheap options never work well.
Yeah.
So I'd say I guess it's a mistake that I did make several times. I was too impulsive. I was too quick to pull the trigger on stuff that was priced low enough for me to say, "Oh, go on, then we'll just try it." It's only £600, £600 a month, whatever. I'll give it a go. We'll try it out. And it turned out to be absolute rubbish and a waste of time and money. So not only was I wasting 3 months on it, but I was wasting £1,800 on it. And then, so I think that was probably my biggest mistake. It was trying to do things a bit quick and cheap, and just wasting time and money, rather than finding a real expert and saying, I'm willing to pay you like 10 times more than I'm paying these other guys, because you're actually going to get me these results and you know what you're doing.
And what would you say is the right moment to start doing that? Like if somebody is listening in, maybe it's in a similar context to you, they started as a consultant and now they're looking to expand. When would you say is the right moment to start getting help?
Probably as soon as your income exceeds your outgoings, like personally, like, so whatever you need as a minimum, right? Take that out, like, so you can get food, drink, pay your rent and all that. Cover your business costs, and then start putting money into people who are going to make the business better for you. Maybe try and put a little bit of money aside each month so that you can build up that pot and get to that. I think it's recommended you have 6 months in the bank. I think I made the mistake of taking 100% of everything that was spare and putting it into that 6-month pot. Whereas what I could have done is put 20% in and built that up over a longer period of time, but started putting 80% into investing in the business. So I think I took too long to invest in the business. So, early days, as soon as you can, like, hire a VA to do some admin tasks that you just don't need to do, because it's not. And this again, like, something I discovered too late. It's not the time it takes to do the work. It's not the cost of doing that work. So, what's an example? Something that I've offloaded. Like cold email and outreach and stuff, right? It's just the number of tasks that I've got to do.
Yeah.
And it's that context switching, and right, I've got ADHD, which makes it even worse, because I look at, I can look at a to-do list and I'm like, shit, I've got like 20 things to do. Where do I even start? And I don't. And it takes me ages. So in the early days, even just handing off some of that easier basic stuff so that you just don't have to think about it is important. Like, even like finance stuff, like invoicing, reconciling your bank statements and stuff, just pay someone to do it. Because it takes, I probably used to spend, well, when I was good at it, I spent 15 minutes every Friday on it, which is not that long, right? But it's 15 minutes there and then, plus a little bit of time before and after when I was thinking about it, plus the fact that it's on my mind forever. It's on my mind every day of the week. Like, oh, what have I got to reconcile? When have I got to get that invoice out and stuff? So just by outsourcing it, you just don't have to think about it at all, and it takes a bigger load off your plate than you think it does.
I agree. I 1000% agree with what you said, and it's not just the time and the cost. I think it's also the emotional element that I don't want to deal with this. Like for me, an example that I have is that I have a house cleaning lady that cleans my house. I don't want to bother to I don't know, like do the house cleaning. I want somebody else to do it, I just feel better
Yeah.
with my life. Like it raises my quality
Same.
of life. And this is way worth it, like for me, even if it costs, I could be doing it myself and save the money, but I don't want to save the money. I want my quality of life to be higher. And I can
Yes.
totally relate. I was the same. I
Same way. I
delayed
get.
way too long to delegate some things
Yeah.
and outsource them.
Yeah. It makes a big difference. And so I would even say, like, if you're starting out early, I guess you've got two routes to go down, and you guys are bigger than us, so you might have a better opinion on this than me. But I would say there's probably two routes you can go down. You can either hire someone to do the client work, and then you run the business, or you can hire someone to run the business and you do the client work. But then you're probably always going to go down that route, right? So you're always, maybe not always, but you're either saying, I'm going to do client work, I'm happy to do client work, and I will keep doing it, and that's my plan, but I want someone else to do the admin and run the business. Or you're going to start moving away from doing client work quite quickly, and you start bringing in people to do that. And you might oversee it a little bit, you might dip in and out, but you're saying, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the business, you guys are going to do the client work.
I want to actually outsource both. I want to outsource both the delivery and the management of the business, and hopefully, like my goal is to launch other types of ventures on the side. But I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. Okay, before we wrap up, I just want to give you the chance, because I didn't really ask you this, and I think it's important that I ask you this. Like, what would you say makes you guys different, and like why would potentially somebody that listens in contact you and inquire about working together?
So I think it is our approach to CRO. So not only customer revenue optimization, but also our UAM methodology that we use. I did a talk about this in Milan recently, where I said there tends to be two ends of the spectrum in CRO. There's the experimentation Puritans, who are very much research, insight, analysis. You shouldn't be tying this back to results. And then on the other side, you've got the best practice guys who are, we test, we implement best practices, it's all about revenue, and that's it, and we move on. So every test is its own individual thing, we move on. We sit in the middle, which is not normally where you want to sit, I think. Normally you're supposed to take an extreme end, but we're very much, you should be learning from everything that you're doing, but also you should be tying as much of this as you can back to revenue, because that's what brands care about. Right? If we spend a month doing a project for a brand, and they turn around and they're like, "What's the impact of this for the business?" and we go, "Well, we've got some great insights for you." They don't care, do they? Right?
Exactly.
We need to turn around and say, "This is what we've learned. This is what you should be doing next," and it's also made you 50 grand a month in revenue. Right? That's the ideal situation. So I think that's what makes us different. We very much have this. Like you kind of said, our approach is we want to grow the business, right? We're good at growing businesses, but we do it through our CRO methodology, as opposed to just being about testing and insights and things. So I think that's what makes us different. We're purely e-commerce focused, which does make us a little bit different as well. And yeah, if people want to reach out, it's customerswhoclick.com or find me on LinkedIn.
Do you how did you choose the name, by the way? Like, I wanted to ask, like, did it just come like this, or was there some story behind
it?
that?
Yeah, kind of. So actually, the business was called Monkey Blocks before, which was a completely meaningless name. It came out of a pub chat. We just kind of liked. I think we were thinking about those little kind of toys that kids have, like building blocks sort of toys. That's kind of what we were thinking. We're going to help with the building blocks of a business. I can't remember where monkey came from. I guess it's because we like tinkering with things, like messing around, playing with things, a bit mischievous. But actually, my podcast was called Customers Who Click. right? When I launched the podcast back in March, or when I started it back in March 2020, we came up with the name Customers Who Click. And about 6 months after that, I thought, why am I building two brands? Why have I got Monkey Blocks and Customers Who Click when Customers Who Click is an incredible name for a CRO agency, right? So we got rid of Monkey Blocks. It's still the official company name, but we trade as Customers Who Click. Everything is Customers Who Click branded.
Awesome. Well, Will, thank you for taking the time. It was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it a lot. And thank you for joining.
No problem. Thank you for having me.